Good evening, and thank you for joining us. It could be a lot easier and less expensive for local restaurant owners to open up a pop-up patio this summer. Thunder Bay City Council will vote tonight on ways to reduce red tape and costs borne by those who apply, and Council will discuss cost containment measures in the wake of COVID-19. Ryan Benazzo has more.
City Council is being asked to make the patio program permanent after a 2-year pilot that began in 2018. Some of the recommendations include waiving all application fees associated with the program this year, offering pre-approved design documents at no cost, allowing patios to be built in some city-owned parking lots, and facilitating some street closures to allow the patio's room to operate. If approved, the measures are expected to cost the city about $48,000 based on a projection of 30 applications. Administration hasn't been able to consult with the retail sector, but says it's reasonable to offer the same assistance to retailers who want to sell their products outside. Some business owners have signed a petition asking council not to allow Red River Road to be closed between Court and Cumberland Streets, saying that will negatively impact their sales. Also tonight, city staff is providing further details on cost containment measures to offset revenue lost due to the pandemic. To date, the city has avoided about $2.5 million in extra costs, largely by closing city facilities. Council is being asked to approve nearly $1.5 million in additional savings, which would include canceling or postponing more than $1 million worth of capital projects that are currently scheduled this year. A number of upgrades to Victoriaville and the auditorium are on that list. Ryan Benazzo, TBT News.
The province is reporting 181 new cases of COVID-19. That's the lowest total in Ontario since late March. Of that number, 126 of them occurred in the Toronto and Peel regions, which remains the epicenter for the outbreak in the province. That's prompted the Ford government to allow even more regions to move to phase 2 of the reopening plan. Colin DeMello has more.
If you live in one of the most populous cities in this province, the COVID-19 restrictions will carry on. Mississauga, Brampton, and Toronto, home to 4.5 million people, will be among the last regions to enter stage 2 of the economic recovery.
I hope that you'll have just a little bit more patience because we are, as I said, analyzing on a daily basis. So I'm sure it will happen very soon. We just need to get the numbers down a little bit more.
The combined new case numbers in Toronto and Peel represent 70% of all new cases in the province. Some say it was simply unfair to be held to that standard.
Markham has enjoyed one of the lowest percentage of community spreads in the whole province compared to municipalities in the region, compared to the city of Toronto and the provincial average.
And so the government today announced several more regions will be allowed to reopen, including Durham Region, York Region, Halton Region, Hamilton, and Niagara Falls. All enter stage 2 on Friday.
This will mean more people going back to work at restaurants, bars, beauty salons, shopping malls, and many other businesses, big and small, in those regions.
Now the question is, when will the province as a whole be allowed to open? Local politicians believe it'll be by the end of June.
Having said that, if we have a bunch of new cases next week that were unexpected, that could delay the reopening. And I don't think we can be tied to a specific date.
The Premier suggested Friday, June 26th could be the date.
I'd love to see it open by Friday. I guess that's everyone's goal, but again, it depends on the numbers.
In the meantime, the Premier says be patient and be precautious.
Don't let your guard down. You know, we aren't out of this by any means.
One small slip up, he says, could come with disastrous consequences for the entire province.
More information has come to light surrounding an explosion and fire at a Thunder Bay grain elevator yesterday. It happened at the Richardson Terminal off of Shipyard Road around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Thunder Bay fire rescue crews responded shortly after, taking a few hours to extinguish the blaze. Fire investigator Kevin Anderson says no one was hurt, and he explains how it happened.
Something did cause a spark that ignited the grain dust. And then the top of the plant, there's explosion doors, and when it builds up pressure, they go off, and then that did it, and that's where the smoke and flames came out of it. So everything worked as it should have.
Richardson officials were not available to comment today regarding the incident or the impact on their operations. Work was halted at the elevator after the fire broke out. An inquest will be held into the police shooting death of a man in Nipissing in November of 2016. 45-year-old Daniel Lagarde died at the Nipissing Hospital after a gunshot injury from an encounter with the Ontario Provincial Police. The inquest is mandatory under the Coroner's Act and will examine the circumstances surrounding Lagarde's death. The jury would then make recommendations aimed at preventing similar deaths. In 2018, the province's Special Investigations Unit determined the OPP officer would not face criminal charges in the incident. The SIU said Lagarde came outside the home with a knife raised and headed towards the officer, who fired one shot, hitting Lagarde in the abdomen. A date and location for the inquest have not yet been determined. A Thunder Bay police officer is being praised for acting quickly and saving the life of a man who was believed to have been suffering from an overdose over the weekend. And city police are warning residents about the deadly fentanyl-based street drug known as Purple Down. The officer responded to reports of a person in distress near Connolly and McTavish Streets. The man was found with needles nearby, so the officer administered naloxone, a nasal spray which blocks the effects of the opioid. The man recovered and was transported to hospital. Inspector Ryan Gibson says Purple Down is a synthetic heroin which is extremely dangerous, and he says there's always somebody trying to make a profit off of other people's misery.
We want you to know there's consequences if you come to our communities and you're involved in this kind of stuff. We see that the courts are evolving with the sentences that are coming out in regards to people that deal in things like fentanyl. And I want to be specific with the types of drugs we're talking about, right? And fentanyl, there's anyone that deals fentanyl, it is a loaded gun. That's all it is. And they have zero concern for the users. It's all about profit, and they kill and impact families. They kill people. It's just bad stuff. They are the worst kind of individuals, and they should be dealt with appropriately by the courts.
Thunder Bay has the highest per capita opioid overdose death rate throughout Ontario. A Calgary woman is facing fraud charges following allegations of elder financial abuse involving an 82-year-old city resident. Thunder Bay Police launched an investigation in May following complaints of suspicious banking activity. It involved over $80,000 in transactions over a 5-month period. The victim was also defrauded of another $20,000 through other means. The 56-year-old accused, who is a family member, turned herself into police last week. She will appear in court in August. Thunder Bay's public libraries are taking a very gradual approach to reopening with a step-by-step plan to offer services in a safe manner. Many other Northern Ontario cities have already started offering curbside pickup at their libraries, but Thunder Bay's chief librarian isn't exactly sure when they'll be ready for that here. Corey Nordstrom has more.
Thunder Bay libraries remain closed as of now, and their leadership has a lengthy, drawn-out plan for reopening, including 7 phases that end with all 4 city libraries allowing patrons inside to use the service.
Phase 1 was basically bringing staff back into the building behind me here at Waverley and using it as kind of a HQ as we kind of regroup after the close down. And stage 2, we're now reopening Mary J. L. Black Library, but only to the staff at this stage.
Staff at those 2 locations can now see visible changes of further stages, with directional lines on the ground and other social distancing measures. The next stage would see book returns available at the 2 main libraries. The old way of dropping books off near the main entrance won't work now for social distancing reasons, and they're putting a strong emphasis on book handling, says Pateman, with a likely 72-hour quarantine for anything brought back to the library.
Well, if you think, for example, at the moment there's 18,000 books that are out on loan in the city. We've got to take those 18,000 books back safely and do some kind of decontamination process. So we've got to be very, very careful how we handle that stage.
Libraries in other Northern Ontario cities like Sault Ste. Marie and Sudbury have already begun curbside pickup, some as early as 3 weeks ago. Pateman equates their slower reopening time to going through proper channels, with detailed guidance from Ontario Library Services North on how to tackle the matter in a safe way.
It's not a race, right? So we don't want to be the first. We don't want to be the last either. At the moment, we're kind of in the middle there somewhere. Now, some of these other libraries that have gone ahead, good luck to them, but they did it without the detailed guidance, and sometimes they did it without the staff being on board with the change. We're very much working with our staff.
Pateman doesn't want to put a timeline on when the move to book drop-offs or curbside pickup will take place, but those eagerly awaiting that news can stay tuned to the Thunder Bay Public Library's website for information, with a phone line answering frequently asked questions currently in the works. Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
Officials at the Thunder Bay Airport say they aren't concerned about the government not including our airport in the plans for mandatory temperature checks for all passengers. Airport CEO Ed Schmidtke says he saw the report, but it's a moot point for them because all the carriers currently servicing Thunder Bay are already screening and doing temperature checks. The airport saw passenger numbers plummet by 90% during the pandemic. Things are starting to turn around, and Schmidtke says he's encouraged by the slight uptick, even if it's just a 5% increase.
So WestJet has announced one additional flight per week, starting somewhere in July, and Air Canada is going up to 2 flights daily, starting somewhere around on or about July 1. So these are all encouraging developments. It's indicating that their advanced bookings are seeing some increase in demand. And of course, we saw our Chief Medical Officer on Friday announce that she's no longer recommending self-isolation when you return to Thunder Bay. So these are all positive indications that hopefully we've turned the corner.
In order to keep traffic down around the terminal, the first 2 hours in the airport's short-term parking lot are free. Cemeteries and funeral homes in Thunder Bay can once again offer larger services. On Saturday, the Bereavement Authority of Ontario released a revised directive, which allows funerals and graveside burials to have more attendees. Meanwhile, a local cemetery that had been closed to visitors is now back open. Cole Promain has more.
Based on positive public health trends, the Ontario government has increased the number of attendees allowed at an outdoor funeral from 10 to 50. This is being mirrored in funeral homes as well. Homes are now allowed to host a funeral ceremony to a maximum of 30% capacity of the venue. Local officials are welcoming the changes.
Well, it means we can get back to looking after families the way we were intended to. We're here for people, the living, not just the dead. And we've been our hands have been tied lately as far as what we can do for grieving families, and now we can get back to looking after them properly.
We're very happy, because 10 was a very difficult number for families. It's almost impossible because you have to include the clergy, so that means 9 family members. Now they've expanded that to 50. That's a wonderful opportunity for families to come to the cemetery now after the funeral service.
St. Andrew's Cemetery on Oliver Road had been the only one in the city that was closed to visitors during the pandemic, except during burials. Sears says with much of the province now reopening, they decided to remove the barriers at the cemetery's entrances last week.
It's been very difficult for them. I know we've had a lot of phone calls. People are concerned. They want to visit. It's summer. They want to fix the graves. People have been, a little bit concerned, a little bit upset with us. So I want to thank them for their patience. It's wonderful, and please come now and visit your family.
With the increased numbers being allowed for funerals, a lot of new measures are needed to be put in place, such as increased sanitation and still practicing social distancing. Gardner says they're very aware of all the risks that still exist.
It feels very good, but at the same time, we still have to be careful. Social protocols are still in place. We can't let our guard down. This is not behind us yet. It just means that we can function within a new norm, if you will.
Cole Promain, TBT News.
After weeks of wrangling and negotiations, organizers of the Terrace Bay Drag Festival have had to throw in the towel for this summer. Over the past month, the possibility of canceling the 22nd annual event has swirled around the North Shore community. Terrace Bay Mayor Jody Davis has now confirmed the event has been called off due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Every year, the Drag Fest draws big crowds and gives the community a much-needed economic and morale boost. Both the town and organizers are still working on a plan to host a test and tune for drag races in July, which doesn't include a spectator component. The event will provide the organizers with a way to fundraise for next year's Drag Fest. Confederation College is celebrating the graduation of close to 1,600 students around the region, and today marked the start of what the college is calling Graduation Week. 17 students were selected for the Diploma Delivery Initiative, where college leaders perform contactless deliveries of a special package, including a college diploma or certificate. The recipients span across all campuses and were selected for demonstrating leadership, resiliency, and academic excellence. The two Thunder Bay recipients are Gaurav Ganju with the Student Leadership Award and Hannah Pollock with the Governor General's Academic Medal for the highest academic standing. Both students say they were very surprised when they opened their doors.
For sure, definitely. There's so many memories, good, bad, happy, sad, but this is the one which tops everything. I did not expect so many people. Yeah, I'm still processing it. So it's a big day for me.
It feels really good, especially coming back as a mature student. I've had a few concussions. I wasn't sure if I could remember things very well. I wasn't sure how studying would go. So it feels good to be like, I could do it.
Graduation week continues until the 19th, and college officials encourage all family and friends to follow along on social media.
And Fiona, this time last week, we were bracing for a little bit of a cooler week.